Recognition comments from the chair. I don't have much to say at this point. We are starting our third week back. It's ironic that even within those 3 weeks, I had an opportunity to go to a couple schools today, and the teachers were saying they've really only seen the kids 3 or 4 days in that 3-week period. But that's a function, obviously, of our hybrid start. I think I'd note also that the reports that we received from the building principals, administrators, cautiously optimistic. We've had a good start. People are working very hard. What I observed is the kids are working very hard as well, trying to adhere to the protocols, and it is certainly going to be a very different school year for everybody. But I think we can all be thankful that we've gotten off to the start, and these first 2 weeks have gone without any significant interruption, at least up to this point. So, I do, although Patrick just noted it, I do just one housekeeping thing. We did receive some comments that sometimes it's difficult for folks watching us on live stream to tell who's speaking. So if people could just raise their hands, that'll also give time for the camera, I think, to move around to pick you up, and hopefully we'll alleviate the mystery of who's behind the mask for folks who are tuned in. Okay, item 4.0, we have the approve and amend minutes of August 24th and September 11th, and I'll take them both at the same time if that's okay with folks. The August 24th minutes were included in the packet, and Vita said she sent the September 11th minutes out in a later email, so hopefully everyone has those. Any comments, corrections to those 2 sets of minutes? No, if not, could I get a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
We have a motion by Lou, second by Lorna. Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes as submitted? Bill, you're gonna have to voice. Are you there, Bill? You're okay.
Yay. I move in favor. No, I don't move in favor. I vote in favor.
Okay.
There we go.
7 in favor, no opposed. Thank you. Item 5.0, adjustments to the agenda. Patrick, do you have anything? No. Okay, I would just want to note that under 9.0 superintendent's report, we have a full reopening update, which Patrick and Katie will do, and there may be an action item coming out of that presentation. So I just want to note that we'll deal with it when we get there. Okay, item 6.0, we have our first public session, and we received one letter comment, and which I will read into the record. I think most of you have a copy of that. It was distributed before this meeting. Okay, September 19th, your school board members. The letter is from Karen De Silva. Dear school board members, I appreciate the opportunity given to me to address you today. I ask that my letter please be read during the Monday, September 21st public comment of the upcoming school board meeting. My goal is to call your attention to a subject important to our family, the Gifted and Talented program at RSU1. We respectfully request a little more information specifically on the GT math program at BMS and why there seems to be a lack of resources this year. For the last 2 years, we are happy to say our oldest son has thrived from the experience he has had in the BMS GT program. The leadership and expertise around this program shined through during the COVID lockdown by maintaining the content of the curriculum. Still, the teachers also had the insight to prep these math students with a work program extending most of the summer, with the high expectations of getting these students ready for Algebra 1. Task accomplished. 2 weeks into school, and the hard work of the teachers and kids have paid off. I'm pleased to say our Algebra 1 class is going very well. We were excited to hear our incoming 6th grader was identified as GT as well, and would be following his big brother's footsteps. Of course, COVID-19 has dramatically changed how we do school this year. Why does a program federally identified as under special ed seem to lack the proper resources needed to properly service these 6th and 7th grade kids requiring special classroom circumstances to thrive? If Mr. Kovac, the RSU1 GT certified teacher, has chosen to teach all remote, isn't it possible he could also teach the GT math program remotely to our hybrid students during their 3 remote days a week? In school districts like Greeley, they are creatively solving their teacher challenges by letting them conduct classes from home by being projected on a screen through a video conferencing program. In the physical classroom, students sit together, supervised by an ed tech, and participate to their live lesson. If you think about our new advancements in remote learning, why would the job of a GT teacher be limited to someone who could drive to Bath for class? With the tech readily available today and already integrated into our schools, couldn't a teacher teach a lesson from anywhere? We'd like to ask if any of these solutions are possible, and were they considered? Who is responsible for the BMS GT and was tasked to make decisions around this program? What is the contingency plan across the elementary and middle school GT programs this year? And is there an ongoing relationship / requirements from the DOE required to maintain creditability? A year is a long time for subs not explicitly trained for the GT way of teaching. This situation has forced us to find an interim solution for our son. You might ask why we are even addressing this issue today if our child's problem is resolved. Our solution is to outsource 6th grade math, paying for it out of our pocket. We believe it is our only option today. 6th grade here at RSU1 is the first time a high-achieving math student is placed in a year math program with peers who learn at an accelerated pace. As we experienced last year, it is even more challenging to test into 7th grade GT math. Their performance in middle school GT math will directly influence their track for high school advanced placement, starting with testing into 9th grade Algebra 1 by 8th grade. The more significant issue here is if my GT math child is not being serviced correctly, then doesn't this issue affect my son's GT classmates too? There is no long-term benefit for only my child getting a certified math teacher education this year, geared to his pace and aptitude for math. Yet his peers, the kids he will be in class with till the end of high school, do not. These 6th grade students will never get their 6th grade back. With the GT program on hold, what does success look like for this program and its students? Lastly, we would love to know when we can expect a reply to this inquiry. If technologically possible, I am happy to make myself available during the second public comment section if the board has any interest in asking me questions. Respectfully, Karen De Silva, RSU1. Thank you. Okay, 7.0, committee reports, 7.1, high school building project update. Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe less than 90 days and we'll take ownership of that building if everything continues to go well. Just some things going on, painting, tiling, flooring, installing whiteboards, cabinetry in the classrooms is all happening now. The paving, if you've been up to our office or up to the high school, the 2 trailers are gone now for Crooker and for Harvey. They're working out of the building if they need to. And paving down on Congress Street, as well as the light pole bases that you've probably seen that are painted yellow down there. The signage at the entry of the building, that is up now. It's, we're having some discussion on whether we like it. And it's what we expected or not, because that is the first thing you see on the building. So we'll work through that. The turf, we have to certify its completion before we could have any student athletes use it this fall to practice on. And, we noticed a few small issues, the company that was certifying it, that need to be worked out before we can, utilize that. And then lastly, we'll be forming a recognition/naming committee soon, because we've had some donors and to work through that process as well. So any questions? I mean, you guys are welcome. I know some of you took a tour fairly recently in the last couple of weeks, but anytime that you want a tour, and we'll start offering more, in the next month or so for people to come through. So questions that you have?
I'd say that the tour though is fantastic. Definitely worth going, and especially now there's just so much detail to see, and it really is great to see.
Jen?
Patrick, do we actually sign a certificate of occupancy like you do in other building, a CO when it comes time to take over the building?
Yeah, I mean, we have to go through with a punch list, and certain things will happen, like the turf might happen separate. We can sign off on that.
Okay.
But then a lot of things fall into one big certification of completion.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's our timing for that?
I would. It might vary a little bit. I mean,
Yes, sir.
the end of December is when we're looking at being complete, but it's gonna, it may take some time. I don't know if Dave Richards is on the phone tonight, but take some time to do some of those punch list items as well. And we talked recently about we should be receiving training on a lot of the equipment and a lot of features of this new school as well, which we have to start getting organized.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Patrick? I know Lou and I, and you were on the last tour through it.
With the,
Yeah.
yeah.
Remarkable progress. So
There really is.
I encourage people to get up there and take a look. Okay, thank you, Patrick. Item 8.0, student board representative report. Tanner, do we have you on telephone?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, it's all yours.
So firstly, it's just the most important thing is it's just such a relief as a student to be back in school, seeing all your teachers and seeing your classmates we haven't seen for what seems like forever. It's just an incredible experience. Sports are back. Golf played their first match today, the Morris golf team. I don't know the results quite yet. I haven't gotten the email from coach, but back into the regular swing of things, if you will. We have the new block schedule this year, which I think students are happy with. We have, the 4 classes instead of the usual 7. For seniors, we're starting to work on our Common App and our other college applications. And yearbook, the yearbook's starting to come together. Seniors are sending in photos and stuff to get our yearbook finished.
Okay. That's it, right?
Yep.
That's it. Go. Thank you, Tanner. Any questions of Tanner? He's a real live person who's gone through the startup at the high school.
Yeah, Tanner, it's Lou. just curious how I know you're liking the block schedule better. It's more college-like anyway, but do folks seem to be handling the longer class time okay?
Yeah, it was definitely a harsh transition the first couple periods, but it's nice. I mean, you get to know your classmates and your teacher much better, much faster. So it's a better, quicker introduction.
Thanks.
I have a quick one. This is Lorna. Tanner, I was just curious, I don't want to open Pandora's box, but what's your impression of the Bright Space from your experience, and how's the rollout been for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's another harsh transition. We were all used to Google Classroom, but one of the greater advantages of Brightspace is that grades that teachers put into Brightspace are put directly into Google Classroom, or pardon me, to Infinite Campus. Whereas with Google Classroom, the teachers would have to input the grade twice, and sometimes there could be some differences in what you saw on one system to the other. Brightspace, once we figure out how to navigate it, I think shouldn't be an issue.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jana.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, 9.0 Superintendent's Report. 9.1 Good News, Patrick.
Again, I would just start by just thanking our staff. I know that, Katie and I have, but, for the work they've done since the beginning of school. They've had to learn a lot of different systems, protocols, to ensure that everything's going smoothly and this, for the students and the families. Thank you for using new ways of teaching and interacting with students because it's not the same, and also for upholding the safety in our classrooms and also fostering relationships at the same time. Our staff overall has been very flexible, supportive, professional, and resilient, and we certainly appreciate all their efforts. Just two items under good news. I don't think I mentioned this or maybe emailed you over the summer, but did want to mention that we received a McKinney-Vento 3-year grant, and it's approximately $70,000 a year to help fund, I call it a homeless liaison, but that's what Katie is. So do we call this a homeless coordinator? Coordinator that we would share with Mount Ararat and SAD 75. So it's very positive news to have that 3-year grant. And the other thing I wanted to share is that we talked a lot about the unified sports that we do, mostly at Morse. And so Morse, their Special Olympics program has been recognized as a 2020 Special Olympics Unified Champion School. And a Unified Champion School has an inclusive school climate. It exudes a sense of cooperation and collaboration, engagement, and respect for all students and staff. In order to receive this recognition, school must have had demonstrated commitment and inclusion by meeting 10 different standards, which I'm not going to go over tonight. But we were only one of 3 schools in the state of Maine, 1 middle school, and then 1 other high school besides Morse to receive this honor from the Special Olympics. So congratulations to the people at Morse that have really pulled this together and led this effort.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Any questions of Patrick on this, Jennifer?
Katie or Patrick, when will we have the coordinator for the McKinney-Vento grant? Is there somebody already identified for that?
Yeah, so it is Donna Verhoeven, who's been working through the skate park right now. She will be able to continue on with her 1 day a week of support, and it will be paid through the grant. And then she's also working the rest of her schedule at the park as well, supporting our students there. So essentially what it does is maintain the model that we have been able to do so far with further funding that's more secure for 3 years, rather than Jamie Dorr having to find funders. So it's perfect.
Okay, great.
Good, thanks. Any other questions of Patrick on good news? Okay, item 9.2. So this is an update on fall reopening. Everybody received 2 or 3 sheets of numbers on enrollment in Patrick's backup, right? Has everyone?
Yeah.
Has everyone received that? Okay. So I'm going to turn this over. I do want to note, and I know Lorna had a chance to walk through Woolwich. I had a chance to walk through Judge Newell and Fisher Mitchell this afternoon. I just get an idea of a visual, let's put it that way. You know, I do repeat the comments that Pat has made. It looked to me as if the teachers certainly were working hard with the kids. The kids were working very hard themselves to meet the protocols and meet the new protocols of distancing and mask wearing and still maintain that educational focus. So there is a lot of difficult steps, well, difficult days ahead, I guess I should say, trying, you know, to reinforce those protocols and meet those standards, but it does seem like everyone is really focused on it, which I think is a good thing. Anyways, 9.2, turn it over. Patrick, you first, or?
Yeah, I'll go first. I just wanted to, mention a few things. I mean, the first 10 days have gone very smoothly for us. I think we were maybe surprised at how smoothly it went. Our maintenance staff did an excellent job in preparing the buildings, and it wasn't a typical year. I mean, we had to put additional, order additional supplies, put additional cleaning products into play, hire new staff, central office staff ordering a lot of the PPE, the gloves, the wipes, everything, the gowns, plexiglass. And again, we've hired additional cleaning staff in each of our buildings to be able to consistently wipe down common touch areas as well as classrooms when students are not in those classrooms. Thank you to Bath Bus. They did a great job with their routes. Students are wearing masks on the bus. There's windows down, sitting one per seat, and a hand sanitizer station is mounted on each bus, which makes it a little easier than just having a little pump thing as you get on. Food service, Tim has done a great job working with breakfast and lunch for all students who need it, regardless of which mode of learning they've chosen. Tech department, the busy training staff in a variety of areas, but especially, the new learning management system, Brightspace, and also providing resources to the parents and families to try to make this go as smooth as possible, even though we realize it can be overwhelming at times. Katie is our new principal of our Distance Learning Academy. She meets with teachers regularly and discusses, instructional expectations and also helps with technology questions. I think that's something we learned early. I can't imagine having a district where this is new to all of us and we need a point person. So it's going to take a lot of Katie's time, but it's something we have to do. In person is going well. We typically have 6 to 9 students in a classroom. Outside tents and the weather have been a blessing. Staff and students have done a fantastic job with social distancing, mask wearing, and hand washing and sanitizing. Having said all that, things are going well, but it's pretty clear that many staff are feeling stressed. The technology training and the heavier emphasis on safety procedures and protocols occupy more time than usual. Simply put, school is different right now, and it's going to take time to get used to it. While our current school setup is far from ideal, we've made huge strides since last spring. We're providing students with much improved educational experience. We're feeding them, connecting them with caring adults, and as much as we can, offering opportunities for socialization. As you know, the plan for pre-K to 5 was to move to 100%, and we put a date out there of September 28th because we thought that that time frame would give us an opportunity to get used to the routines and the safety protocols. We measured our school spaces this summer, and there is space to fit desks 3 feet apart in most classrooms. And if it's not possible in some classrooms, we have alternate spaces to be able to use. However, over the last 2 weeks, we've learned a great deal about transitions, breaks, movement, eating, lining up, and just the challenge of keeping students socially distanced. We conducted a survey last week that numerous staff expressed health and safety concerns about moving to that 100% in-person learning on the 28th. And I'll stop there and let Katie review the survey at this point. I mean, I think we had 186 staff.
Yeah,
You're gonna go over
100
that?
people responded.
Okay.
So of the 100 responses, which I would say is very high, for a lot of the people within that 186 number would be people who might not even take the survey, because it's every single role that fills up our schools, so that's what that number is. And it was a pretty even split between all the schools and actually all the grades. We had anywhere from about 12 to 18% of grades responding of the folks who worked within those grades, which is great. In terms of the main two questions we were looking for is there anything else you feel you need to be prepared for 100% of students to return? And an answer of no would mean I'm ready to go, and 40% of people said no. An answer of yes would mean there are still things that people feel would need to be considered before they would feel ready for 100%. So it was basically a 60-40 split, 60 feeling that they're not prepared. So you could, as you all saw, because you saw all the comments, I'm not gonna obviously read all, I think there was at least 80 different comments of the 95 respondents. Most people did share something, which was extremely helpful for us. But I did kind of categorize them on the survey into main topics that were patterns over and over. And so I'm gonna talk a little bit about each of those instead of sharing all the comments. General safety of students and teachers, just being able to social distance. So right now, the guidelines are that 3 feet need to be between students while their masks are on inside learning, and then you should have 6 feet between yourself and a student if you're an adult, essentially. You can go closer with a shield if need be, but for short periods of time, still trying to maintain 3 feet. And in some of our classrooms, what teachers shared and what we've seen as we've been traveling around, and probably what the two of you saw today, is that social distancing, once you have people in there and desks and chairs, and even just having students be able to move from their seat to where they're gonna use the hand sanitizer or wash their hands, the movement is not something, while we were measuring, we had quite a sense of what that would look like. And it is making things feel more crowded. And so all of those comments make a lot of sense when they're added up. So that social distancing and a concern about not being able to follow the 3 and 6 foot rules always is something that came up over and over again. The ability to do breaks and movement. I think with mask breaks, which we talked a lot about together here, those can happen inside under certain circumstances, and then outside. It's obviously already getting colder, and I think when teachers are realizing, especially with younger students, how often they do need a break or they do need reminders, that becomes a lot harder the more bodies you have in a room. The lack of space in many of the rooms, just in general, 3 feet. So while we measured all the rooms and most of them can fit, in some of them, as you've all been in our buildings, some rooms are really, really large and some are not actually very big. And I'm thinking of like Woolwich, I believe it's 4th grade, has some of the bigger enrollment numbers and is one of the smaller classrooms, and that's just a chance. Like by chance that ended up happening. And so that's something that was mentioned a couple times in a couple instances. The eating for snack, breakfast, and lunch is happening. The systems, I think we figured out the system right now. I think people worried are worried of what it's going to look like when there are more people with masks off, and then snack becomes a lot harder to accomplish for various logistical reasons that I won't go into right now. I think some of the most poignant comments, and I so appreciate the honesty that everybody shared in the survey, were things that over the summer when we were thinking of how to carry out all of the guidelines. If you think of, let's take one of our larger classes of 18, having to line up 3 to 6 feet apart, and how long that line actually is to get them anywhere in some of our hallways. It truly is a logistical feat to make that happen multiple times throughout the day. And so that was those were some of the concerns that Patrick referenced before in terms of transitions, where what does it look like in the hallways, in lines in the classroom, at recess time. With teacher planning, time and space, because especially at the younger grades, we have students in their classes all the time. Specials happen in the classroom. And so teachers, because we only have a certain number of people in some schools that are allowed in the teacher room, actually are planning in their cars or, are finding a spot in the hall, wherever there's space, because if the teacher who's coming into the room is using their desk, they sort of need to find another area. And so just concerns about having their own space for planning. And then, you know, the time to do it, Patrick referenced all the new systems, Brightspace, but we also have Lexia and IXL and Dreambox and all these amazing products that everybody's excited about, but it obviously takes a lot of time to learn all those when you're also just making sure students have their masks on for a lot of the day to keep them safe. And so these were some of the things that came up. I would put technology was a common theme that came up sort of under that. And then 3 others, the cooler weather leading to a lot of people are relying on outdoor space right now to make movement happen, to make sure students aren't struggling to stay, to sit in their desks for really long periods of time since they can't have them moving easily to stations or whatnot. And so just worries about that happening. And then with the weather changing, and then I think just, what we all feel, which is general stress and anxiety around the way life is right now. And, I think one thing I'm really proud of is when you read through the comments of the teachers, while they're full of stress and anxiety, it is because they care so deeply to keep the kids safe. And that very much shines through. It's not, we don't want more work, we can't do this because it's too much for us. It's, they truly are taking it so seriously that they do not want someone to get sick on their watch. They want to be able to carry out all the protocols. And so it seemed to me that that stress and anxiety really came from a place of caring and safety, not one of workload. So I just wanted to make that clear. So those were the main themes that I saw. So I'll turn it back over to Patrick.
Yeah, and I would be remiss, I thanked a lot of people, but the one that I overlooked, which maybe just because we have such close contact sometimes, is the nursing group in our district. You know, they've been an invaluable resource to Katie and I, to our principals, in addition to Dr. Hannah, so thank them as a group as well. So no, I think at this point, like Katie said, our staff, we want our students back 5 days a week, but I think we have to be cognizant of the items mentioned, you know, in this survey, the concerns that have been brought up. And so I think at this point, we would kind of open it up to questions that board members might have, if Steve's all right with that. And we do have our building principals on the line tonight in case you have, you know, specific questions about, you know, one of our schools or how things are going. So does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, so let's have some questions.
Well, so,
Just,
yeah, so Katie, when you said it was pretty evenly distributed, folks who, is it, there isn't one school that just because of its physical structure or something is, people are more concerned than any other, or does
No.
it seem to be, it's pretty much that, as you said, it's just, you know, folks
Yeah.
responded throughout. I was just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question. I should clarify. I meant across all grade levels, we had a pretty even distribution of people responding. So it's not like the 5th grade teachers answered more than the K teachers or something.
Right, and it wasn't one school where you got more
No,
than any.
I would say, if we can go into detail. It definitely more of a concern that was written in the survey. Obviously, some people don't share their concerns in the survey. Came from Fisher, Mitchell, Woolwich, and Dyke Newell, less so from Pittsburgh. But Pittsburgh, we know has, they do have some larger class sizes. So they also have some smaller class sizes. They also have some pretty good sized classrooms.
Yeah, it's a big.
And so even for instance, they have right now a large 2nd grade classroom, but the teacher, when they're doing things like a snack break, because of the size of the building and the use of the building, they're actually able to, if I asked about this, use 2 classrooms. They have an extra space, so she can have part of her classroom leave, eat, or take a break somewhere else. And in some of our other buildings that are tighter, like I'm thinking of Woolwich, we don't have enough extra spaces to split those larger classes. And so Pittsburgh just works better because it's 1 class per grade, and they do happen to have larger, many of them large actually classroom spaces. So.
Right, I just wanted to make just the clear, it's,
No, it's a
I
good
think
point.
it's a good clarifying point that it is district wide, this concern.
Absolutely.
It wasn't, I mean, 80% of this was all
No.
one school, and then the rest was like, but it sounds like it's more that it's,
Yeah, no, when I sorted
It is
through both
district
high
wide.
school, it was pretty,
I just wanted that clarity,
Yeah.
that's all.
and I would also say, I think one of the, we asked these questions because we wanted to know the answers, not so
Right.
we could just check the box. And we also want to listen to the answers. And I think there were many places that were gung-ho or areas and groups of teachers where from the start, they were actually originally upset to do hybrid. They wanted the students 100% right away because they were so worried about learning. And those people, many of them, not all of them, but many of them have specifically shared with us that their minds have been changed because of the
experience.
protocols and the experience. And they do want the students back. I think everybody does 5 days, but they can't imagine how to work the logistics and the teaching with the space that they have.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Sure.
Other questions, comments? Anita?
Is there, what really came through for me in reading the comments was the anxiety that the teachers are feeling. And I'm just wondering what we're doing to support them formally. I'm sure the principals are being wonderful and, they support each other well. Is there anything formal that we're providing for them?
We had one session last spring that people could opt into. And I actually have this, the reason why I'm opening my report here is Chewonki and their White Point folks have reached out because they also have a similar concern. And so Austin and I have kind of been putting our heads together of some professional development that he wanted to do for some of the staff over there. And one of them is called Understanding Mental Health in Our Times. And it's both from a perspective of how do we help students, but also how do we help ourselves. And so this was actually something, this and engaging students in virtual learning were the two professional development topics that I was going to bring up with the administrative team next week. And Chewonki was willing to fund some of the professional development because I do think you bring up a really good point. It's caring for the students, but I think sometimes teachers forget that they also need to make sure that they're not so stressed out that they're not able to, function themselves. So it's a great point. That's definitely on our minds.
Thanks. Anita? Any other, I had an opportunity as I walked through to talk to some of the teachers today. And they did, they are an optimistic, hardworking group. I didn't hear anyone say, this isn't gonna work at all. I mean, everyone is looking for solutions to make this learning, this teaching situation work. One thing, and again, just, kind of, to put it in, at least for me, to create a perspective, we're looking at or it seemed, we saw evidence of pretty good, compliance by the kids. I mean, everybody was wearing a mask. Everybody was working to maintain social distance. That is a challenge. Teachers were in a position where they had to separate kids and remind them to maintain that distance. But, we're also only 2 or 3 weeks into it. And I guess I wondered and shared that with some today, that, at some point kids are going to test limits. They're it's almost like, well, this is new, we're going to do it. But what's the behavior in November, which might be different. So even though in first blush, the rooms look great, spacing, at least the schools I was in, I can't speak for Woolwich or Phippsburg certainly, but spacing looks good, but you just don't know what's going to happen when you add those additional students back into the class at this point. And I think that's part of what raises concern among the teachers. At least that's my sense of the comments that I heard. It's not that we can't deal with the situation that we have, but if you double that, there's just a lack of assurance that it's going to be run as smoothly as it seems it's running now. One question I have though is when are we going to know? And it might be a rhetorical question again, but when are we going to know that it's okay to go back to full time? If we don't do it at a particular point in the calendar, what successes or experiences are we going to have over the next several weeks that are going to say, well, okay, it's okay. We're confident. We're ready to go full time. I don't know. Have you given any thought to that?
I mean, I think it's keeping a pulse on, how we're making progress, how the staff feel with the protocols that are in place. I mean, right now we do have that flexibility of going outside. We won't, in another month or two, and that's limiting too. So now I don't know that we're going to know exactly when that point is. I mean, we have Megan, I don't want to put her on the spot, but she's here as a teacher in a school that is doing 100%. I don't know if you want to weigh in, but I don't know, when that tipping point is for us to be able to feel like, I mean, not everybody's going to be on the same page. We haven't been through this before. So, but when is this, do we feel it's the right time to do that? I don't have that answer.
Well, I can speak about my experience if you want. It is challenging to do all the protocols, but I also for me, I feel like it's more difficult for me as an adult, and the kids are adjusting better than I am. And and they're all willing, the mask thing hasn't really been that much of an issue at all. That we're able to go outside still and all that. But yeah, I understand the concerns too. I've been rereading all these comments too, and the line thing can be tricky, especially if you're the one adult with all of those kids, and making sure maintaining the distance, and then how far that is, and how if you either stay in the back of the line or if you go in the front of the line, who's watching the other end of the line. But yeah, I don't know. It's such a hard thing for me as a parent, as an educator and stuff. I feel like there's no right answer, I guess. I don't know.
I'm not sure there is a right answer.
Yeah, so it's really hard. I mean, it's great to have the kids. It is great to be back and have the kids there all day, and our day is definitely adjusted. Everything is adjusted. Arrival, lunch, snack, recess, dismissal, specials, everything. But it's going okay. It's going pretty good so far for us.
Which we have to remember, as I've said several times, could change very quickly. I mean, it's going well. Everything is proceeding well now, but we're at the whim of something that still is largely not completely understood.
Right, so until that changes, either there's fewer occurrences, there's something that, and they can change some of the protocols. I think what we're finding is right now, they've got what they can handle, is what I'm hearing. And that until something changes, you have a certain physical space. Patrick said you're gonna not be able to use the outdoors as frequently soon enough. And until, guidelines change, we know more about how to protect ourselves, there's some breakthrough. This may be it for a little while until, we have another building and there's talk of what we can or can't do regarding that. But, so I don't think there's a date you can put on it right now. And like you said, anything can happen, and there's already schools around Maine that are closed to go full remote because of things that are happening, so.
Any comments, any other comments? Jennifer?
Did this survey, maybe I didn't see it, did this survey cover the bus drivers? Did it reach out to them? Because I'm concerned about, or curious about, excuse me, what our bus service would look like with full non-student.
Well, we would have the two different bus runs, so that's how we were sort of solving the problem. Right now, when we have 50%, we just have the one start time and the one end time. So it would be an alternate schedule to what we currently have if we do go to 100%, because some students would come at 8:20 and some would come at 9:20. And some will leave at 2, some will leave at 3.
And just one other question, was this survey given to the building principals as well, or was it just?
Yeah. I send it to the listserv of everybody connected with each building.
Okay.
So I don't know if they answered, but they could have.
Anita?
I just wanted to say too, that I myself am feeling, just extremely wanting to be extremely cautious, with moving ahead. I think we've seen with over time, Maine has really good numbers as far as infection rates staying low, hospitalization rates staying low. But we've also seen with recent events how quickly a situation can get out of control and how quickly the illness spreads, and then we end up with a disastrous situation. And that just makes me feel even more cautious in terms of adding more students into that mix. And as a parent, my own son, he's at the high school, and he hasn't been to school since his first day of school because he's now sick. He doesn't have COVID, he tested negative, but he's sick, he is very sick. And we're already into that start of the school year, kids sharing illnesses. It just adds that much more to it.
I would add that if the board does decide to not do the 100%, but do the hybrid, the one piece that we're currently not doing with K-5 is the distance part. So on the days when students are not present in school, a teacher can assign things through Brightspace or one of our other learning programs, but it was optional because it was such a short period of time. But I would, I think Patrick and I both feel that students would be needing to do those days of distance learning as well on their home days to make sure that we are giving them, more time to be focused on continuing their learning.
Lorna?
You sounded like you're in good
Well, I
thought,
was
though.
going, but go ahead. No.
Okay, so, I don't want to say too much because, I think it's been covered, but just a few things. The themes, of course, that I saw with teachers were just sheer, difficulty in enforcement. Some things that struck out at me that I appreciated from their experience with the hybrid was that the quality of education is better. And so I can talk all day about my concern of pulling this back, and what that's going to do to parents and the community. But the quality of education after them not being in school since March is big and important. And even being at school today, this whole level of quiet, some of it I miss because I miss the buzz and the interaction. But very much there was this level of quiet and learning while they were there. A few things for me that would be very difficult to change is I don't see how we can ask parents to be involved with distance learning. If there's anything we can give parents through this, I think, and again, it's not my call, but I just have to say it, that for parents that we know are already working, and then to figure out how they're gonna distance learn too, whether that can be rolled out slowly, I don't know. Again, it's not my thing. But if there's anything we can give back and recognize we're taking the stress off the teachers, and now we're putting it into the community. So to ask two parents to distance learn too, to me, right now would be, in my opinion, tough. But that said, you know, I'm kind of getting hung up on, well, we said we wanted to be able to try. But each day we turn on the news, a shift to yellow and our community is imminent. And it doesn't matter how good we're doing, it seems like the cautionary word is overabundance of caution. So even if we're doing everything right, I know there's a lot of pressure to just shut schools down over maybe one case or two cases. So I feel very vulnerable. We all do. That we can go to 100%, but we all know that overnight that could change. So I don't want to get too hung up on, well, we said we try it and now we're not, because just this is the way it is. So that was it, just the quality of education. I really heard teachers say that they like hybrids, that they're doing a good job, the kids are doing great, and the quality of education is good. And then just parents being expected to supervise distance learning, that would just be a lot. Those are my major comments.
Yeah, and I think, sorry. I thank you. I think, I agree with what you just said. You know, as a parent of a young one too, like the figuring out the childcare thing has been an ongoing something we're working on, and you know, I think that that's something that's a huge sort of weight on the other side of the decision that you all are making. This will be harder for families in many ways, logistically for them. I think the slow rollout of distance learning is absolutely something that we would do regardless of your comment, because our teachers are still running all the programs, and because we don't want to overwhelm students with more and more screen time. And so we can absolutely do a slow rollout. I'm not sure we would be able to manage anything else.
And can they,
Lou?
yep, thanks. Can they kind of go old school? I mean, can we,
Yeah.
I know it's more resources, but can you print out map
We do.
sheets? Can you,
we
I know
do.
some of that's happening, but,
Yeah,
you know, so that when they're not there, they're doing it that way. It's read for an hour and log it, you know, I mean, just things that, so at
Absolutely.
least they're because everything doesn't have to be IXL or getting on the computer.
and I think what makes that easier as a hybrid model is you don't have to always rely on what am I sending home in the mail, but it can be more of a back and forth with, okay, can you complete this
Mhm.
paper thing and then bring it back?
Right,
The
right.
next time I see you, versus when we were in the spring, it was hard to do because nobody was here where they could print or mail or anything like that. And so it was very, very tough for the younger students. I will say since the spring, we also have purchased programs like Lexia and Dreambox that are purposely made to be more engaging for younger students. Granted, the attention span of a younger student in kindergarten is not very long if you're a parent at home trying to manage it, but we have tried to buy things that are more like video games that learn. So it's not every day like pulling teeth for the younger ones, if it's done along with some packets. So that's the idea. But there's no world in which we would have a young child on the computer all day long and expect the parent to do it. That's just not something that I think a teacher or a parent would be able to do. So.
Anita?
And just throwing a thought out there. Would it be possible at all to offer 5 days a week to certain students who might be identified as being at a higher risk for a variety of reasons that I don't think I have to spell out? But
Yeah. That's actually what we're doing 6 through 12. So I know at the high school that's already started. At the middle school, I want to say it's going to be up and running soon. But we do have some students in the older grades who don't participate in any distance learning. They're there 5 days a week. And so their teachers are with them 5 days a week rather than planning distance learning. So I would assume, we haven't talked about that level of detail, but I would assume we would do the exact same thing.
Because that could go a long way.
Yeah.
To alleviating.
What is the rollout for distance learning going to look like? Just hypothetically, what's it going to involve? Are we going to be able to support parents effectively?
Well, I think parents, the teachers need to finish at the lower grades, learning how to use Brightspace the most effectively. Parents need to feel like they can do that as well. And then assigning, these digital programs or sending packets home. And I would imagine that whatever amount of time we think is sufficient for learning to take place at home, we would not do that all at once. We would probably say if it's, let's just throw out an hour, maybe the first week, 20 minutes, the next week we would do 40 minutes, and then maybe we would work up to it. And then just sort of be more flexible with it. If it doesn't seem to be working for families, we have to adjust, just like we're doing right now. I didn't think we would be having this conversation a couple of weeks ago, but here we are, because we want to make sure that we're being fair and kids are safe, So I don't have an answer for you other than that, because I have to make up a plan.
I do want to say that I observed in conversations with teachers, also when I walked around the buildings, they did say that they indicated that the class, that the attention they're able to pay to the kids when they're in school is enhanced. Everybody seems to really, feel that is a plus, having a smaller class and being able to focus more. And I think just got the sense that part of the concern I was hearing from the teachers was sort of the reflection of the opposite of that. When class is full, not going to be able to give individual kids that much attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's interesting. It was interesting. Any other, Jennifer?
Katie, is part of the distance learning potential to have, to be able to have those teachers that are currently doing all distance learning now support classroom teachers or would that really be better just to stick with that same class?
Yeah, we would stick with the same teachers. The caseloads for our distance learning teachers are pretty high. They have their hands full. So I think that that group and myself have all learned a lot already of what works and what doesn't. And so I could pass that information on to the teachers who would see.
So when you say stick with the same teacher, they're going to have the same.
So your higher
class teacher is
correct.
going to be
Correct. Yep.
If there's a classroom that has just naturally a small enrollment number and would fit with, would better fit with having a full classroom and have enough space, that's not something that we can offer because it would be inconsistent across the system, right? I mean, you can't do it per classroom type of thing, could you?
I think that brings up the point of equity, and we do have, I can think of one grade level right now that, it's smaller. And so, and sometimes that poses a challenge to the teacher if you don't have 8 or 9 in there, you have 5 in there, that as far as engagement and everything else. But yeah, I mean, that would be a difficult one, I think, from equity standpoint.
Yeah.
I also wanted to comment on, Lorna's point on the impact that any decision we might make tonight or another night if the board's not ready to make a decision, and the impact on the community. But when we entered into this, we had 3 primary objectives. The first being health and safety of students and the teachers. We were focused on providing educational content, instruction. And to the extent that it represents a list of priorities, awareness of the impact on the community was our third objective. And I'm not saying that we explicitly said that was our, like I said, that we developed those in terms of priorities, but that's the way they fell out. And I think you know, we need to be very mindful of the impact of the parents. But, you know, perhaps there's a way to, well, not perhaps there's a way, I mean, we need to support them as effectively as we can. And in this distance, you know, if we're back to distance learning, and that just becomes a challenge for us to do, but maintaining the health and safety of our employees and our kids, I think is for me, it's still a paramount concern.
Yeah, and I said it, but it's knowing that everything dangles in the balance, no matter what we plan, is just, even over the last few weeks, has had made me realize that no matter how gung-ho, or how much we can do 100%, it's knowing that whether it's us that changes it or something else, it's very clear that it's far from over, and it's very precarious. So if there's something we're doing well right now, which is the hybrid, and that's the other thing that struck me, is that I wasn't hearing teachers say, I'm afraid of getting sick. They weren't saying that. They were saying, I can't possibly do all of these things now that I'm doing it, and educate at the same time. That's what I was hearing. It wasn't afraid of getting sick, which I was struck by actually.
Any other comments, Megan?
Well, I guess just to go along with, I just have the concerns of where the students will be if we stay hybrid, and how, so, like, I think like at the skate park, I think they have distance learning, right? For help for the students that are in middle school and high school right now. So students are already congregating together in another environment. And I'm sure it's very safe, but at the same time, they're still, so it makes me worry about where the elementary students will be going. And so there's still just more mixing, or I don't know how I want to say it, but more exposure, I guess, to. So that's just a concern that I keep coming back to. And I know, sorry. And I know too, like for me and like at my school, we've talked a lot about really focusing on the social emotional learning of our students, and that being the main focus for our students. So I know the concern of not feeling like you're truly educating like you used to, but I think there's still merit in being in school.
Jennifer?
I was gonna ask a question, I guess underlies what Megan just said about is, I guess one of the things I would want to know, do our community partners, do you have any sense of what our community partners would be available or be able to do in terms of if we stayed with a hybrid program? You know, what would be the capacity of the YMCA, Mid-Coast Alliance, other programs that are out there that do service students when they're not physically in our schools? How are they ramping up, and is there a capacity there to do a service some of the needs of parents?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to work with them closely if we go in this direction. You know, we worked with the Y closely already. They're always very flexible, supportive. Everybody we work with the organizations with childcare, daycare. So, you know, we'll be exploring all those options with them to see how we can be of help.
Patrick, of the other districts around us, who is also going to come?
You know, West Bath, you know, I don't know what West Bath's total population is, but it's a smaller elementary school.
I think we're just under like 100, I think, or like around 100,
Yeah,
I think.
and so West Bath is 100% around us. And then, you know, Brunswick and 75 are a hybrid approach. You know, and so I really don't know about Booth Bay. I know SED 40 might have a school that might be, 100%, but the majority is, is a hybrid approach. So,
So most of them are hybrid around us. So.
correct.
Additional comments or?
Yeah, so would you say is schools that are close in our size, systems that are our size are all hybrid?
I don't know if they all are.
Well,
I mean, if you go to
many
Central
are.
Maine or whatever, but
The
in
ones
this,
right here are.
in this area and also in the, like, down the 95 corridor,
Right.
Down from Brunswick, yes.
I think if it's well, if there are more comments or questions, since the board we took action to adopt the plan, I think it's Patrick's suggestion, and I agree that if we are to modify the plan, we should do it by board action. I think what Patrick is asking that we acknowledge the successes that we've had up to this point, but also the concerns for going to 100%, and that we continue the hybrid approach at the K through 5 level until further notice. I mean, just taking that date certain off the end. We may find, as Lauren points out, we may find that next week we go yellow and it's forced upon us. We may also find that as we become more confident in our hybrid teaching, and as things begin to become more of routine, within the buildings, that we want to revisit the question or the issue of going full time. But at least for now, that we take an action to continue hybrid until further notice. But I won't ask for that motion unless everyone's comfortable acting on it tonight, or if people want to think about it, we can come back. I'm very sensitive to the time. We need to give as much notice to our community as possible.
I guess I would just say that, the survey that we did with staff, I mean, we had to wait a little bit because we're only a couple weeks into school. So the timing here wasn't great because we needed to get their feedback, but also give them a chance to kind of get their feet wet with what we're doing. And again, we realize this is going to have an impact on families, but that, feeling like erring on the side of caution for the health and safety is, needs to be our top priority right now.
Jennifer?
So remind me, please, if we're to stay in a hybrid mode, does that mean that children can still get food every 5 days a week? Okay. And the other thing is that I'm wondering that we're doing this because of what it's like to be inside the classroom and function there. And we want to keep people very safe and not allow the children to be too close for too long, but also for our children's safety. And I guess when I would worry about keeping our kids hybrid, but allowing other places that we do things in our school system to maybe not be as careful. For example, if we stay hybrid, and then we also allow, and it's kind of related to this, but public perception, if we also allow attendance to our sporting events, and that creates a lot of less social distancing, and people see, well, you can go to a sporting event, but my kid can't class 5 days a week, or my kid can play sports, but my kid can't go to class 5 days a week. I mean, I'm sensitive that there's an impression that one has a priority over the other, which it doesn't, but I think that we have to be consistent in every part of our school system, going to continue on this hybrid model and not have the opportunity for kids to come to school every day. Sensitivity has to be cautious throughout.
Well, yeah, and I think though that some of that has to do with, we're talking about this because it's in an enclosed space, where the sports that we're referring to and talking about right now are outside. So it is a different that's a huge difference actually. But I mean, we do have to explain, I think the bigger thing is if we're gonna do this, we have to know that there'll be a population identified that may have to come 5 days a week, that we're going to work with all the community partners. That's the emphasis that I think has to be out there, that, because some families are gonna panic, they're gonna go, what am I supposed to do? And we have to know that it doesn't mean that maybe your kid, there may be a certain number of kids, that's what we're gonna have to figure out in terms of spacing and what kids from what schools, right? That's what you need time to figure out. And for their needs and situations that where we can accommodate, we will, and that we're gonna work with the other community partners to make sure that this is a cohesive effort. So as Megan had pointed out, everybody's in a safe space and limiting exposure whether they're in school or not. And I mean, that is the thing. As far as, the sports, I think takes us in a whole other direction of what does it mean to be outside and how do you stay safe and how do you keep the numbers proper in terms of if anyone is coming to see it. Then, that's, I think, another dynamic that also has to be kept safe, but that we can talk about.
Well, there is a perception issue. We are tasked with coming up with solutions to this, and even though there are some functions that the school performs, or provides, like sports activities, for example,
Co-curricular.
or co-curricular, we shouldn't lose sight that at least for me, I wouldn't lose sight that my main priority would be to look for ways to deal with to get kids back into the classroom 5 days, as a goal. I understand, again, it's a perception, I understand, but it's important. It's important. We are about education, first and foremost. Whether we have spectators in the stands or not, is really not germane. Well, it is. I think it is important that folks perceive that that's where our focus is on education. So are people comfortable with taking this motion up tonight?
Would it be okay to ask how the building principals feel about this? Would it be okay to have them weigh in on if they feel, not a long dissertation about all the issues, but maybe, I feel that we should stay hybrid for these 2 reasons? Like, could it be as simple as that, just to kind of see where they are? Because how they,
They're all on the computer, we can ask them.
No, Jason, you out there?
Yep, right here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I think so.
Yeah, I just want to first just thank the school board for taking the time to have, such a thorough discussion about this. I don't envy your position in having to make a decision. I think in summary, you've hit all the main points. For me, it really would come down to, I think, a lot of about the quality of what we're able to provide right now. I think as, we can make it work either way, but the interaction with students from an educational perspective will change if we are back 100% with all of our K-5 students. It will shift more to a management perspective than the ideal educational that we're able to accomplish right now. So, that's kind of where I am at this point. I think we are certainly able to make this happen for 100%, but it will change the quality of what we're doing right now.
Ross?
I would echo what Jason said. The only thing I would add is there was a question about when we would know that we're ready to go back. And the examples I have, like I have two examples. So today, this morning, there was a student who, the kids are naturally social distancing upon arrival. And there was a girl, and then another student came up and tried to go into her space. And the first child like backed away because she's very ready to accept like the full responsibility of the distancing. And her friend was originally good, and then she saw her friend and she wanted to go into her space. The other day, I had two line leaders. I secretly told them to find a spot in the, like when they're walking and just stop moving. And in one class, the students stopped. Everybody in the class stopped. They looked down to find where they were on the floor, like they're a dot to separate, and they backed up. And the other line, the students stopped, and the other kids kind of like got in, they sort of kept walking because they weren't fully aware yet. So for me, I think the issue is going to be, or one of the questions will be, when can we comfortably say that the kids are naturally doing everything they're supposed to do? It's part of their routine and pattern. And I think we're slowly getting there, but having the kids in the A and B group only with us 4 or 5 days so far, they're not ready for that part. We can make it work, but as Jason said, that will strictly be a management. We will just be managing the kids. If that made any sense. Sorry, I was long-winded.
All right, Jen?
I would, again, just thank the board for considering this so carefully tonight. I know it's a really difficult decision, and the impact on families is definitely a big one. I would say that as a school, I think we'd appreciate the ability to continue in our hybrid approach for a longer time. Right now, we have a system that is working, and everything becomes more challenging if we double the enrollment. Some of the things that we have to address to make sure that we can eat and transition and have our staggered bus runs and try to make lunch and breakfast and snack work, they become immensely more difficult. So right now, the system that we're using, kids are okay and staff are doing okay, and we're making it work. And I appreciate you stopping by today to visit, Steve, and kind of check that out. Moving to full in-person would pose some really, really big challenges. So I appreciate the conversation, definitely.
And Sandra?
Well, as everyone else has said, I appreciate the thoughtfulness, and I don't envy you your decision. We're ready to do whatever it is that is asked of us. I have two concerns. My concerns about going back full board is having the traffic in the parking lots because we have so many people dropping off and picking up kids. That's a concern. We've managed to kind of piece together what we would do for breakfast and snack in spaces. So it's the large group activities that are a challenge. And my other concern would be the hybrid model and just the quality of trying to get across the education that we really desperately need to give our youngest learners. So just working around that remote learning piece and not knowing how long that's going to be going on.
Thank you. Thanks. Further questions, discussion? No? Does anyone want to make a motion, or you want to
Can I just, I was just sitting here thinking about Jennifer's comment about, or input about sports, and I agree that while it's separate, I understand what she's saying completely, and the consistency is key. I will say, just from the involvement I've had with my kids doing it, I don't see sports being a free-for-all with a bunch of yelling spectators at all. In fact, the the teams are even having to pick how many kids they can let go compete. So the good news is that I feel a lot better about that. I was really worried about that in the beginning too. Is that, and that is not my sense at all, just from the communications I've been having with Mr. Priest and my kids telling me that, I don't know if I can go to the meet this weekend because there's only so many that can go. And then the consistency again is the remote asking parents to distance learn. I know I've had some assurance that wouldn't be rolled out right away. And I would ask that also be consistent if I have any input in that, because you might have a teacher who's more gung ho than another one. And maybe they'll say, well, let's try some distance learning this week. And then the next class might not be doing that. So now we have parents in one part that are freaking out, trying to figure out how to do it, and all well intentions, but I think as far as consistency goes, I would really hope that would be very consistent on when if we start rolling that out.
Further comments, discussions? Are people comfortable with a motion that we go to hybrid until further notice? I don't think any of us want to make.
Not comfortable.
Want
No,
to
but-
consider
I
it?
can't say I'm comfortable.
I mean, that's, nobody's comfortable, but I think everything's pointing to that, and obviously the sooner we get notice, otherwise we're just, I don't know what we're waiting for. So I would say that, yeah, I would move to maintain the hybrid plan as we are doing it until further notice.
Second.
Do we have a second? So we have a motion by Lou, second by Anita. Further discussion.
Can I ask how to do an amendment? I'm the newbie, so could I just maybe do an amendment to the motion?
Well, you can put it out there. And
Mr. Chairman? Okay, so I would agree to the motion, but could we amend it that we would have a time frame, whether it's January 1 or another date that the board would get an update? So we're doing it till further notice, but when we leave here tonight, do we know when we might be able to circle back and maybe get more of an update for maybe staff again or something? So it's really an amendment with a date.
I don't know if it need to be in the amendment. I think what we would ask of the staff is that we are being kept updated in the same way that, the state's going to tell us every 2 weeks what state we're in. And, green, yellow, red. I mean, I would hope that once you figure out, you got a lot of work at it. Once you figure out where that's at, you could say, if at least during our meetings, we're getting updated every school board meeting on where things are at. And if they, if Ross is like, hey, my kids have this down, and I'm starting to look toward, something else, maybe it's sooner, maybe it's later, I don't know. But I'm hesitant to put an actual date. I'd like just frequent update personally.
well, you raise a point that I was going for, Anita.
I was just gonna ask if it wouldn't be too much to ask of the staff to do the survey for us before our meeting each month. I don't know how lengthy that survey was. It was just a couple questions. Was it?
It was 3 quick questions, but then people who wrote obviously had to spend more time on it.
It was very valuable.
Yeah.
Well, let me take the prerogative of the chair, because what I wanted to talk about, and what I've talked about with Patrick, is how we can effectively keep up to date with what's going on. And I'm not convinced, for example, that a monthly, what I suggested to Patrick was, a monthly update from the principals, for example, really isn't particularly timely. So what Patrick provided to us, Friday was an enhanced report, really. I'm very mindful of his time, to sit down at the end of every week and write a very detailed report to the board on what, essentially what happened. But I think, I'm not going to speak for you, but I think you've agreed to undertake that. So hopefully on a weekly basis, we'll have a very clear sense. We'll have a clear sense of what's transpired you know, in the schools. I would hesitate to put a date on it, like, you know, because, you know, like January, for example, because it could well be, at least in my mind, it could well be that at the end of any given week, you know, we feel we've met, you know, based on a review of the activities that have gone on with the school and conversations that Patrick's had with the administrators, that they feel, you know, perhaps it is time to approach the board once again, you know, with a question on whether or not, you know, we could go transition, you know, to full time, but do it on a weekly basis, not on a monthly basis. As far as administering the survey, I mean, you know, maybe we can do a routine survey of staff every month, but it just seems to be more timely if we get this information on a weekly basis. Yeah.
I like the weekly updates from Patrick. If he can do that, I think that is very helpful. But I also like a survey from the staff because it's the teacher's voice. And I think that they're the frontline executors of this. And every person that's a step away from that front line has the potential not to see those things in the same light or the same importance. And I think hearing from our teachers is such a crucial thing. So I not necessarily would like the survey every month, but if we do go forward, I would like the commitment that we do hear back from the teachers on a quarterly basis or somewhere that you guys decide what that time frame is, but then we'll hear from their voice. They'll have a chance to be able to give written examples just like they did here.
Well, we don't want to micromanage this, but I do think we need weekly updates.
I just said that from
Yeah.
Patrick, but
Yeah.
eventually to have this ability to have another experience that have the voice from the teachers in it.
Yeah, I
like
think
this
it's common
survey.
sense probably another survey, you know, maybe in a month and a half, you know, something like
Mhm.
that. And then we'll bring that back to the board as well. So,
Thank you.
and again, some of that might have a little distance learning in it. It may be a little bit different, but we don't want to overwhelm staff either with, you know, a long survey. So we certainly can make that work.
Thank you.
That makes sense to me then. The weekly updates are great. That was so great to get Friday. Jennifer's points I also agree with, and I think the teachers want to talk to us. I always wasn't sure. I mean, that first few meetings ago, we really only heard from one school, but now we have the whole district. And so I don't think any of us want to micromanage. I think the teachers actually want to say or have a chance. And I think that's been refreshing too. So that answers my questions on that. And then Steve, thanks.
So we still.
Well, I just have one more question.
Oh, sure.
If we continue hybrid, do you still need the staggered bus schedule? If only half?
No.
So have they been going the regular day or have you been doing those
They've been going in the hybrid, they've been going, you know, at elementary level, you know, the usual times.
their usual time?
Yep.
Okay,
And then we just wouldn't implement the 2 bus runs.
so they're going to school 8:30 to 3?
Mhm.
Okay.
So it's the full day for elementary?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion that we have is to continue the K-5 hybrid until further notice.
Yeah.
We do not have an amendment to the motion. And we do have a second. We have a motion and a second. Are you with us, Bill? No, that's Bill. Okay, all in favor of the motion? 6-5. All right. Bill, are you there? No, don't have Bill. Tanner? Oh, we have a technology glitch perhaps. Okay, so the motion carries. So we will continue with our hybrid for K-5 until further notice with weekly updates from Patrick, and we'll figure the survey in the future to communicate again with the teachers on how things are going. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. All right, 9.3. Well, let's just as a, it's not on the agenda, but I do want to just get back to it. Everyone, are there any I mean, I heard comments that Patrick's update was useful, detailed, and any other comments on that? I think it's important that we do stay appraised on or prize on a weekly basis. If not later. So, okay, 9.3. This is still you, or is Eric going to take?
Yeah, Eric and Nate, are you out there?
Yeah, I'm here, Patrick.
I'm here.
Okay.
Okay, this is on co-curricular and extracurricular activity update. Go ahead.
And Nate, maybe we'd start with you with just, how it's gone this week, update on, any numbers, and then, about the spectator piece, and scheduling, stuff like that. You want to start there?
Sure. Yeah. So good evening, everybody. Just to touch base on this past week, it was our first official week of the fall season and practices. I had a chance to witness and observe many of them, and by all accounts, it went really, really well. Essentially, it seemed to me like a continuation of what we had established already this summer, which is, students and coaches adhering to the guidelines that the MPA had set forth. So there was no surprises. It seemed like everybody was very happy to have a season and have something to be playing for this fall. I think that could be said for both coaches and athletes alike. So overall, the first week went really well. As Tanner had mentioned in his statement earlier, the fall season did officially kick off today with Morris Golf. We were out at Bath Golf Club with Brunswick and Mount Ararat, and it was a little surreal almost seeing other schools, students from other schools playing against the Morris team. I hadn't seen that since March with a unified basketball game. So it was a long time coming. It felt really good. Kids seemed happy. And I think overall we're off to a really good start. So all fall sports are going right now. Football hasn't practiced yet. They do intend to start practices tomorrow. I do want to say just a thank you to the coaches and the students for following guidelines to make it a good, successful start so far. We have 174 athletes signed up so far this fall, which is down about 40 or so from last year, right around this time. But that's not including unified volleyball, which we offered last year. We're not this year. And then football as well. It's been, kind of a slow startup with football once we've gathered more information on what we're going to do this season. So overall, I think we're pretty close. I know there are some students who declined to come out this year, which we, fully respect that decision for them and their families. So as we speak, schedules are being created. It's been a chaotic week or two. I feel like I'm doing about 2 months worth of work in about a week and a half or so, just trying to create schedules and, game schedules, practice schedules, things like that. So just a thank you to the Bath Rec for their flexibility and their work with me on such short notice. So far so good on the fall season. I do want to talk about spectators a little bit. I know that we did leave that open-ended in the board meeting where we decided on fall sports. There's been a lot of questions from stakeholders, from whether it's students or parents or others, regarding whether or not we will allow spectators. The Kennebec Valley Athletic Conference, to which Morse belongs, did vote no to allowing visiting spectators, but each school can decide on their own what they want to do as far as their home spectators go. And Steve, you did ask a question at the last meeting about whether or not Bath Rec or the city has a policy regarding whether or not they can or cannot allow spectators. I checked with the rec on that. They do not, but Steve Balboni did say he'd be happy to work with me and with the school on, anything that we need to get done. So since I've started trying to wrap my head around spectators, have a better sense right now than I did about a week ago on I think the direction we want to go. I've been able to play with numbers a lot. I feel like I should be teaching a math class at Morse at times, but I've been able to gather some information from some of our coaches. I'm going to use boys varsity soccer as an example. Between the athletes, coaches, support staff, which includes the ball boys and officials, and about 22 to 25 members of the other team, we should have about 50 to 55 people, just including our home, people. And that's everybody on our home side. If we want to factor in cheerleaders, which our cheerleaders would like to cheer at least one game a week, whether that's boys soccer, girls soccer, or field hockey. They don't intend to do all of them. My first conversations with the coach, she was, just wanting to provide a lot of support. We had several conversations around that and just, the need for spectators or the want for spectators possibly. And is it really necessary for the cheerleaders to be at all of our events? So she's happy to do whatever we need, and she just wants to support us however she can. So we do have 24 cheerleaders and 2 cheer coaches, and maybe a third who's a volunteer to factor into that as well. So that'd be just a once a week thing. So with cheerleaders, we're looking at approximately 80 people to a boys varsity soccer game. And that's pretty equivalent to what we would expect at a girls soccer game. We would expect less than that for field hockey. And then cross country and golf are a little bit different. I'll talk about cross country too. I've had to get creative with the schedule. So we're scheduled to host our first cross country meet at home on Friday with Mount Ararat and Brunswick. And talking with their athletic directors of those schools, we would have over 100 people between Morse, Mount Ararat, and Brunswick, including coaches and athletes, myself, our athletic trainer, and a timer. So obviously that's not feasible. So we're actually splitting that meet. We're going to run half of the meet on Friday, half of the meet on Saturday, which should be about 50 to 52 people at each meet. And this ultimately will allow for spectators, for home spectators potentially, for both, the folks that run on Friday and on Saturday. And we'll work out those details with the coaches in terms of who runs which day, but that could allow for spectators, for home spectators for both of those events as well. And then golf, we, at the event today, we had maybe 5 or 6 spectators. It wasn't largely attended. It starts at 3:30 in the afternoon. And as you know, they walk all over the golf course. So parents typically will watch their son or daughter tee off, and then they usually will leave for the most part. So that's kind of where I'm at with spectators. I do think that we have room for them. I'm willing to work with coaches on this. I think that, I talked with Chuck Reese, our boys varsity soccer coach, today, and ran some ideas by him. I also spoke with a Mount Ararat athletic director. We brainstormed some ideas as well today on what he plans on doing and, my thoughts as well. So a lot of collaborations going into this. I think that we can make it work. And I don't think that it'd be nearly the headache now I thought it might have been about a week or so ago. And then just lastly, I wanted to touch on football. I left that a little bit open-ended as well in the meeting a week and a half or so ago. They do intend to start practices tomorrow. They won't be padded, no helmets, no equipment, anything like that. It's 2-hand touch or flag. We do have some schools reaching out to gauge our interest in playing them interscholastically, such as Mount Ararat, Brunswick, and Freeport. So I just wanted to round back on that a little bit. I don't know that we've really made a decision about football, but it did fall into the risk category that soccer and field hockey did. So I just wanted to put that out there as well. And that's all that I have.
Questions of Nate?
Hey Nate, it's Lou. I just had a question of what we talked about, when you were talking to other parents and stuff. So if you're talking about priorities, I assume some of that is if you are going to have spectators, that at least it would be, even if it's limited, that senior parents, who this may be the last chance they get to see their kid, do it. If you have an opportunity, maybe not every game, but some games, would be a priority.
Yeah, absolutely. Seniors are the priority. All the coaches know that. So in my work with the coaches, I would intend to, I need to run the numbers first. I gather information from the other school. How many kids do they have coming? How many coaches do they have on staff? Add those numbers to what we'll have at our facility, and then communicate that to the coach. If we have 80 people who, between the players and everybody else, I'll communicate to the coach, we'll have 20 opportunities or 20 tickets available, so to speak, for spectators, and then work with a coach on that. So the first priority would be to the seniors, but I'd encourage or require of the coach to essentially talk to his team, create that checklist or create that checks and balances where they go right down through and ask, for instance, Max Ambrosio on the boys varsity soccer team, how many parents would you have coming? And then really create an attendance list around that and make sure that information is, sure.
Sounds good.
Jennifer?
So who controls that not exceeding that number? When you say that you can do this, it sounds like you've decided to allow spectators up to the legal limit of 100. So my question would be, who monitors that there aren't more than 100, that people just show up? Who monitors that they are practicing social distancing? And what happens if somebody isn't? Who has the authorization to ask somebody to leave or to impact that?
That's a great question. And Patrick and I have talked a little bit about that as well. So we could potentially hire somebody for that position. It would be one more person to add, but there would potentially be somebody at the gate, whether it's a faculty member or another coach, and they could check people in. Have an attendance list, people's names would be on the list, and they would check people in. So that's one option that we thought of. In the past, we've had security for football in the fall. We aren't spending that money this year, obviously, so we could potentially have security from Bath PD available as well, just on the premises, not necessarily specifically at the event, but on the premises. I would be in charge to make sure that people are socially distancing. I don't know if you saw, there was a video that went viral or whatnot. I think it was in Utah, somewhere out west, where that exact thing was happening. I think it was a soccer game or it was an event on a turf field, I believe. And people weren't social distancing, and the athletic director stopped the event until people either left or behaved themselves. So I would be in charge of that. I wouldn't expect a lot of people, obviously. If we only allow 20 people for a soccer game, that I feel like that's a pretty easy crowd to manage. But if not, then we would just ask people to leave. And if this ultimately didn't work, then we would just shut it down and not allow spectators.
Well, maybe it's going to be difficult to enforce. I don't see the Bath PD coming up to someone and saying, telling them that they don't have a mask on, they've got to leave. These are our rules, not the Bath PD's rules. And I'm, unfortunately for me, I guess my frame of reference here goes back to graduation out at the Wiscasset Airport. But the senior the mask policy was very difficult to enforce. I mean, the graduation went great, but parents. Parents are a different breed. They don't take direction like their sons or daughters do necessarily. And there were, even though people were asked to wear masks, and certainly that was the majority of folks. There were folks who just chose not to do it, it becomes a it just becomes becomes a question of whether or not we're again a question of consistency. We're requiring students and requiring that folks wear masks in all school related activities, and we're going to have to enforce that strictly at these outdoor gatherings, and folks are just not going to see the need for it. But maybe, as you said, maybe if we'll try it maybe, and we'll see if there's good compliance. If there isn't, we'll keep spectators out. it's not gonna be an easy task. Any other comments?
Anything else on athletics for Nate before, see if you had any questions for Eric?
Okay, well, let's talk, Nate, you said there's 174 people or students participating. Why does that compare to what you had in the summer program?
Summer program, during phase 1, we had right around 90 students. And then when we moved into phase 2 and phase 3, we had between about 100 and 110.
Okay. My question, Nate, going back to, your presentation a couple weeks ago. And I'm still not sure I have a complete understanding, but I mean, these are city-owned properties. This is not school property. This is back property. I'm talking about McCamp Field largely. And the question I asked, and I know Steve Balboni said he'd work with you on that. But the question I asked was whether or not the city would agree to allow us to enforce our requirement of mask wearing, even though, there's no city ordinance against, at least not as far as I know, that would restrict people from participating or being on that property without a mask. So I think that question is still out there in my mind. Basically you're going into a public space and saying, well, you're gonna abide by my rules, not by the rules of the municipality in this case. So I do urge you just to check on that again.
Sure. So Steve, I just want to be clear, you want me to check on whether or not there's whether or not we can develop a policy around it, around wearing masks?
Whether we can enforce, right?
Enforcement.
Well,
Yeah, whether we can enforce it.
I would think we can.
I mean, drinking, rowdiness, those are easy ones as far as, in a relative sense, if you go to a football game, people are rowdy, people are using cigarettes, most city spaces, tobacco-free. So in those kinds of instances, we're kind of lockstep with what the municipality how the municipality would manage their property. But here we're not in lockstep. We're saying you got to wear a mask, but I can go to McMahon Field or Waterfront Park or any city property and not wear a mask, and no one is going to tell me I've got to leave because I don't have a mask on. But in this instance, that's what we're going to do. If folks show up and refuse to wear a mask, we're going to ask them to either put a mask on or leave the space. So I do think we still need to clarify that.
Okay.
Anything else for Nate? And at the middle school level, we're still working out some, questions that we have, some details, but again, it would just be kind of a skills and drills amongst ourselves, the best that we can do. Any co-curricular activities, questions you have for Eric? I know he's been, working on trying to get those organized and up and going. Some of them might be remote, some would be outside, some would be in person, depending on the numbers.
Now, Eric, are you running into any major issues in the logistics of what you've been working on?
I am not. I'd like to just thank the advisors. They're all really just waiting until we could see what we could do. And once we got the word from you that we could follow suit with athletics, most everyone was ready to jump in and start brainstorming what would work for their club or activity. And I've met with almost all club advisors. And it really varies depending on what it is, what the nature of the activity is. we have a little bit more time here because these are year-long events. So we're not trying to get a fall season in necessarily, with the exception of our theater program. We kind of do have 3 seasons. We have a fall play, and so I had spoke with Kevin O'Leary at length. He was very excited with the news that we were able to move forward, and we had already mapped out the way we would do that as an outdoor event with smaller spaced out stages and whatnot. I'll spare all the details, but it'll be a nice fall play. And then other activities like debate, the state organization has decided to go remote, and so our debate coach Larry Bartlett is ready to follow suit there, and the students will be meeting this week. Math team is waiting on the state organization to figure out if there'll be a real season and how that will work. And for activities like that, if there isn't a fall season, we'll probably look to provide another enrichment opportunity, even without the sort of more traditional sense of the activity. The biggest hiccup would be our music clubs. Obviously, singing, woodwind, things like that will be problematic, and we have some time to think about that, but we're just kind of in a holding pattern now. The other activities are really in-house, and things like SCLC, our SAFE group, Civil Rights, Green Club, Interact Club, and so on. The clubs are going to decide, working with me and the advisor, of how to run them safely. Some will choose to go virtually. Some will have smaller groups, either in a big space or outdoors, because they really do want to meet in person. So it's variable, but I think we're moving forward, and everybody's appreciative of having the opportunity, really.
We have some questions for you, Eric. Jennifer?
Hi, Eric. So I was interested in learning from a Times Record interview with you, reading that in the Times Record, that if I understood the article correctly, is that you were indicating that you would have audiences at the theater performances. And I was just kind of interested, since we were kind of waiting to hear the decision on the spectators for sports, that it sounded like the decisions for the audiences at the theater program was already made, and if I understood the article, reading the article in the Times Record. So I was just interested in how you came up to that decision and how that would look to having the public being involved in that event.
Yeah, well, I would I would say that it's always interesting to see what does come out, and it's not exactly, it was more of a discussion in my mind, but we do have some ideas, and again, Kevin O'Leary and I had talked at length at how this would work. It would be for the fall play, it would be an outside event, and so we'd be capped at the 100, and we could even bring it down smaller than that if we felt the need. Spacing would be a lot easier at an event like that, and we could have the supervision and whatnot. I think it's very doable. Clearly, if the board chooses otherwise, we would not have it, but we would still want to move forward with the play. After the fall play, our attention in the theater quickly turns to Mohiba, and that will be a different beast in terms of how we would run it. Clearly, it's an inside event normally, and it would involve a tremendous amount. If we tried to run it anything close to what we normally have, it would involve a tremendous amount of mixing of students that we don't normally allow in the school building. So that will probably need to be a much different event than what we're accustomed to from Mohiba. I think we still can hold an event similar to the way we held a graduation, or we held an award ceremony or a senior assembly or whatnot, but I think it would be moving more towards the online version.
And Eric, certainly for the outdoor play, even if you have a smaller audience that's socially distanced seating, and, with those concerns, but, with whatever, rules of mask wearing, I'm assuming like other plays, we probably, videotape it, so there'd be other ways, I don't know if you can do online streaming as it happens, but certainly, as it's done in the past, when the events have been recorded and then, people can see it.
Absolutely. Graduation, the Steve Marois, who runs Bath TV, did our graduation. That was live streamed. So there is the capability. We haven't approached the city on that yet, but that would be the idea.
Other questions for Eric?
We're 4 minutes before 8.
Yep. We're gonna get you off before 8, but I do want to ask that as you continue to work through these various extracurricular activities and give thought, if you could feed that information to Patrick so he could include it in our weekly updates would be helpful. This is activity that's very important to parents and to students both, and we appreciate the progress you've made up to this point in terms of theater and debate, and I think you also mentioned math club, getting something going there. But if you could keep us advised of that as you develop these opportunities and options, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Yep. It is almost 8 o'clock, and as a practice, we do not go beyond 8 o'clock except by explicit direction of the board. So can I get a motion to continue the meeting beyond 8 o'clock?
So moved.
Motion by Jennifer, second by Lorna. All in favor? Any opposed? Bill, are you back? No? Okay. Motion carries. Thanks, Eric.
You're welcome.
9.4 fundraiser request.
Just an FYI, we try to do every year. It's obviously a much smaller list this time. And you can see that some are even 2021. So they're just, planning, hopefully, if there is a fundraiser or two that is done in person, again, it just may look different. So, nothing earth shattering. There's just a handful that we just wanted as an FYI too.
And 9.5, Deb, are you out there?
I'm out here.
Okay, so 9.5 financial report. Thanks for staying with us, Deb.
Well, I had a little bit of technical difficulty at first, so maybe that's what's up with Bill. But anyways, here I am. So I'll be real quick. Basically, we're looking at August for a new year, and we're just beginning. So as you see on your financial report, we've spent just a little over 2 million, which is consistent with how we have spent in the past. Brought in a little over 5 million, which once again is consistent with the past. All of our salaries and benefits will start, most of the 95% of them will start showing up in September. Morse High School, we're down to, we've spent 76%, so we're down under $20 million to spend. So we're coming close to the end of that. Well, it won't be until like May, but we're moving right along on that. And then our 2 coronavirus fund that we're working with right now with the federal government is we've spent about 163,000 out of the URSA funds, and that's the one that we have up to 2 years to spend. So that's moving along. And the coronavirus relief funds, which is the big 1.6 million, we've spent about 300,000 out of that. So we're starting to charge some salaries there, and quite a few supplies and our tents and those types of things. So all going well there. And that's about it.
Okay, thanks, Deb. Any questions, for Deb?
I have a quick one. It's more a reminder. Is it October, or actually could be for KD2? Is it October where we submit our enrollment numbers for our state subsidy calculation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, October 1st report.
And I thought I printed that, but I didn't, and it's probably here. But are we down? We're down a little bit. We're down. Was it 40?
45, maybe.
45?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Deb.
You're welcome.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Can I just ask, I don't know if this is like our rule now or not. Can I close the window? Or
Sure.
do we need the air moving? I don't know how people feel about that. I don't know I don't know if the kids are having it open all the time. It just, everyone appears to be cold, so.
Yeah,
Is everyone comfortable with that?
Go ahead, I'll shut.
I was just gonna ask you to put the fan on.
You what?
I'm like, no, please don't.
Let's move the meeting to outdoor. Okay, item 10.0, old business. We don't have any old business apparently. 11.0, new business. 11.1, personnel. Patrick?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Cynthia Strzeluski, our music teacher at Woolwich. She's accepted another position, and I'd like to thank her for 4 years of service to the district.
Yep, thank you, Cynthia. Okay, 11.2, we have the agreement. This is an annual thing, an agreement between the RSU and Midcoast Pediatrics for the services of Dr. Hannah. And we certainly have used her services this year. So, this is pretty standard. I don't know. I can't tell you if the amount has changed, but.
No, not in recent years. And again, we made up for anything we didn't take advantage of. So I would just recommend that we approve this so we can just make it official with Midcoast.
So do I have a motion that we approve?
So moved.
the agreement? Motion by Lou, second by Megan. All in favor? Any opposed? 11.3, the Maine School Boards Association annual meeting, or annual delegate assembly is taking place. I think it's in October. I don't have the
Usually
information
middle of
on it.
October.
But we can send a delegate. And is there anyone who is interested? I mean, it's going to be largely a virtual experience. You know, we're not going to Augusta this year to sit in the Coliseum. Any board members interested in being our official delegate?
Is it during the week?
Yeah.
It's usually a Thursday, Friday in mid-October. I think it'll probably stay that way. And again, it's not the whole, I don't believe, even if it's virtual, it's going to be the whole day.
Okay.
But you certainly could attend all the sessions on those 2 days that are remote. But I think there's a point around lunchtime on one of those days where, that's when the delegates get together and you get things, mailed to you ahead of time. And then you weigh in, giving your opinion about, your perspective from our district on certain issues and then voting on things. So.
If no one else is interested, I am, but certainly, I don't want to take a spot either.
No.
Okay.
Okay, so Lorna, you would accept. So do I have a motion to appoint
I move to appoint Lorna.
as a local delegate? So you have a motion by Lou, second by Jennifer. All in favor?
Did I vote? Probably not.
You don't even get a coffee cup?
Oh, I do?
You might.
You don't.
We got a water bottle.
A stress ball?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 11.4, we have 4 policies that are here as first reading. I'm going to list them all and then we'll go, or anyone who has comments on any of them can raise them. So we have ACAA, which is harassment and sexual harassment of students. The second policy, first reading is ACAA-R, student discrimination, harassment, and Title IX sexual harassment complaint procedure. Policy ACAB, harassment, sexual harassment of school employees, and ACABR, employee discrimination / harassment and Title IX sexual harassment complaint procedures. So there's a symmetry here. The first two deal with students, and the second two deal with school employees. They are extensively revised. I presume the source of the revisions are DOE. Any comments? These are not action items at this point, but if you have questions, this is the time to raise them.
Steve?
Yep, I'm sorry.
I just did have one comment I wanted to raise to the rest of the board. When we looked at these policies on ACAAR, on page 5, number 13, you'll see it says the investigation shall be completed within 40 business days of receiving the complaint. If practicable and reasonable extensions of time for good reason shall be allowed. That's an increase up from 21 days. And I questioned that during our committee meeting because I felt like that was an awful long time for somebody to have to wait, both the victim and then someone who's been accused of something like this. And I didn't feel really good about the answer that we got. I didn't feel like it really gave us any information to go on. So I would like that when we go back to the committee this month for us to look at that again and maybe try to get a better answer to that question.
Do you know, I mean, that was one of my questions. I mean, do you know or have insight into why it was expanded from 21 to 40?
Patrick, I don't think there was a reason for that one.
Yeah, I mean, I sent that out to you guys,
Yeah, you
didn't I?
sent an
But
email to us, but it was very vague
Yeah, it was-
what the lawyer said.
yeah, it was, I don't recall. I'd have to look it back up, but we did send it out and we forwarded that to you guys, but I can't remember right now sitting here the rationale for it. You know, about whether it was the thoroughness of it or just being allowed to, just to make sure that, some investigations take a long time to do, but we can look at that again.
One question I had, just for clarity, in terms of the person responsible, the individual within the district responsible for determining what sanctions should be applied. I mean, for students, for sexual harassment and harassment of students, it's the superintendent who determines appropriate sanctions. For employees, it isn't stated, at least I couldn't find a comparable statement of who actually is responsible for the remedy, procurement. So in the case of an employee, if there's a situation involving harassment or sexual harassment, is it still the superintendent who?
I mean, usually it's superintendent or designee, same with students. I mean, and Katie is, we have Pam Doe, who's our affirmative action person, and Title IX coordinator is Katie, so.
So usually it would need to be the titles and not our specific names, but things related to employees, Pam does, things related to students, I would do, just because of our positions. So that should be indicated in there if it's not there.
Yeah. I mean, in both, they talk about determination of responsibility. They talk about the decision making. You know, they kind of go to a neutral term. They don't say the superintendent, they don't say the, you know, the Title IX coordinator, they say the decision maker. And I'm just, you know, wondering.
Because Pam and I both serve as the affirmative action officer essentially, but for different groups because it wouldn't be, it's more appropriate for her to do, because I'm a supervisor between staff, she would do that and then it would come up the chain sort of command as needed. With students, I'm the one that oversees this. So we have essentially the same title, but we oversee different aspects.
We can get some,
Okay.
we can get
I
some.
just- You know, if, you know, they talk about, in certain situations, they talk about the role of the superintendent, the coordinator. The school board chair has responsibility in the case of complaints against the superintendent. But then they use this neutral phrase, the decision maker.
So we can update it with the language that we actually use for the names of the roles we have here. That will probably make more sense.
And I just had one other comment, and that had to do with appeals of this are made to the superintendent, I guess, right? In all cases, student and employee appeals to the superintendent. Okay, any other questions? We'll get some clarifications before we have to act on that. If there are no other, we should expect to act on these at our next meeting. All right, so item 12.0, next meeting date and location. The next regular meeting is scheduled for October 26th. I'm going to assume that if the governor's executive order limiting public gatherings is still in place, we'll conduct the meeting as we have conducted this meeting and a couple preceding meetings. And I would also suggest that we do it here at the middle school. If we can change the executive order, we can change venue and change the, I know I've received some comments about when the public will be able to access the meetings again in person. And I can assure those folks that as soon as they're able to do it, they'll do it. As of now, it's just not practical. Okay, so any other comments or items of concern? Yep, Lauren?
Just quickly, and I know we've talked about this on and off, so I know we don't typically discuss, have discussion or debate public comment, but can we agree or can we have an understanding on when we get pointed questions or when someone asks when we're gonna get back to them? Should we consider, I'm putting this out to everyone, should we consider maybe putting that either in our goals or advancing it to a meeting where we don't have so much going on with COVID? Just to kind of put that to rest with me. When we get comments that are just so pointed and directly asking questions of us. And again, I know typically we don't discuss in that current meeting, but is it something that we could advance to the future for consideration in a future meeting?
Well, we take all comments seriously, and we do try to respond to everyone. So I hope, yes, we will make a response. I can't say that the response will be in a meeting or maybe through other form of communication, but we will will make a response.
Steve?
Yes.
Did we used to have 2 public comments when we used to have a regular
No, we-
in person? Okay.
We do, but given the fact that we, the first comment period is generally limited to comment, well, we try to organize them, and we limit the first public session to comments on the agenda. If anyone wants to speak to anything on the agenda, the second public comment period is more open
Okay.
to any comments.
Okay.
So we will respond.
Yeah, and I know we had, the agenda today was pretty substantial, so there was just a lot going on. Just always want to kind of bring some closure to things if possible, but I get it.
What I think the board has, again, as a matter of practice, I mean, we are responsive to the public. We don't, we can't always work to everyone's schedule. But as we can, we will be timely and we will respond.
I mean, my impression of some of the issues is that I feel we have some background knowledge to, feel comfortable about the response so far, so. Okay.
I'll just offer, I know, some folks and maybe some board members find the board's practice of not responding to public comment as kind of off-putting in a way. I mean, we might feel that we're putting the comment off, but and actually as a new board member, I raised that with the previous board president. And he made a very, what I always felt was a very good, good response. These meetings are our business meetings, and we try to conduct, we have business to do. I mean, it's just part of our, the mandate that the board has. And that becomes the focus of these meetings. We can receive the comment, we can act on it. But the meeting is not a place, and the board can always change its mind and do something else. But I just felt it was a good argument that the meeting is not, this meeting is not a place for a back and forth to begin to hash out issues. It's more a forum for us to conduct our business. We can adopt other forums that will enable that give and take. As you recall, when we started, kind of got, COVID kind of cut us short. We started last year with workshops when issues could come up and we could enter into a much, free flow conversation and discussion with members of the community. The couple that we did, I thought were very successful, and then we closed school.
Right.
So, I mean, we can look at those forums, those opportunities.
Right. No, I do understand that. And if anything, it may be going forward when we can, is address other things or goals that we all had hoped to address that wasn't related to COVID-19. So at best, hopefully, it guides us in some of our planning and goal setting in the future.
Goal setting, something we haven't done yet. Another something we haven't done yet.
We usually set goals in August and
Yes,
weren't able to do
that's,
that,
yeah.
so.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so. Okay, yep, thanks. All right, if there are no other comments, I'll take a motion, accept a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Motion by Warren, second by Lou. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm getting old.